Users can get product info straight from images, including details that are not covered in product descriptions. So there's no surprise that high-quality images taken from multiple angles and showing the product in action increase user satisfaction. However, images also need to be optimized for search engines. When it comes to increasing conversion rates, savvy online retailers understand the importance of images, especially for product images. A study of online consumers found that 67% of consumers believe that an image is very important when selecting a product. The same study showed that more than 50% of consumers value the quality of a product image more than product information, description, or ratings and reviews. From an SEO point of view, product images can drive organic traffic through Google image search and universal results that include images. Images can also be used to improve the document relevance and to optimize internal linking. To understand images, search engines will first look for the alternative text of the HTML image element. Some search engines will be able to extract the text from images using a technique called optical character recognition, or OCR. Let's optimize an image for SEO. We'll start with a very basic implementation of the image element, ending up with a highly optimized, SEO-friendly image tag. Note that I will use the terms tag and element interchangeably. So this is the basic image element. How do search engines analyze images? Here are some signals that search engines use in order to understand, categorize, and rank images. They take into consideration colors, sizes, and image resolutions. They look at the image type. For example, is the image a photo, a drawing, or a clip art? They also weight text by its distance from an image and extract context from the text around an image. They look at the overall theme of the website. For instance, adult websites will have all images tagged as adult and will be filtered out when the Save Search filter is on. Search engines will use the alt attribute of the image tag. The content of the alt text is directly used in document relevance analysis. The title attribute of the image tag is not cached, but it can provide additional context. They also use image file names. They look at the total number of thumbnail images located on the same web page as the ranked image. They perform OCR, or optical character recognition. They also use self-learning artificial intelligence trained by human input at large scale. ReCAPTCHA is one form of human input. As you can see, search engines take into consideration plenty of clues when analyzing images. For those who want to know more about this subject, a Microsoft patent application from 2008 provides an interesting description of how images are ranked for image search. Did you know that when you solve an online CAPTCHA, Google and possibly other search engines use that input to validate or refine artificial intelligence for image recognition? There are about 200 million CAPTCHAs typed in every single day. That's a lot of human validation. If you're interested in this subject, the first link at the bottom of the slide points to a very interesting TED Talk about ReCAPTCHA and massive scale online collaboration. Here are some image optimization best practices. Take your own images. This is not an SEO factor per se, but it will help you differentiate from competitors and can open doors for image licensing partnerships. However, having familiar imagery is important when searchers look for a product they already know. If you do take your own product images, differentiate, but try not to alter the look of the products too much. Add an alt attribute to every significant image. Adding alt text to images is the best way to give search engines more information about the image and about the page content. Without the alt text, the chances of an image being indexed in Google Images are lowered. The only attribute of the image element that gets cached by search engines is the content of the alt attribute. Here's a typical product listing grid. And here is the content that will be cached by search engines based on the alt attributes. The alt attributes should include keywords, but those should not be simply a list of keywords. When writing the alternative text for your product images, think of how you would describe the product image to a blind person in a very succinct and relevant way in fewer than 150 characters. That sentence will be your alt attribute. Most of the time, the alt text of a product thumbnail image is the exact product name. In the case of thumbnails for a category listing page, the alt text is the category name. However, you can add a few more details by including significant product attributes. Instead of the alt text DG2 stretch denim long skirt, you could use DG2 stretch denim long skirt in brown. Spacer images, 1-pixel GIFs, or other images used just for design purposes should still have an alt attribute, but it should be empty. This is mostly for code validation and cross-browser compatibility. All other images that visually depict something important to visitors should have a descriptive text. Microsoft recommends to place relevant text near the beginning of the alt attribute to enable search engines to better correlate the keywords with the image. A copyright symbol or other copywriting notice at the beginning of the alt attribute will indicate to the search engines that the most search-relevant aspect of the image is the copyright, rather than what the image actually depicts. If you require a copyright notice, consider moving it to the end of the alt attribute text. More of Microsoft's recommendations for alt text can be found in their Image Guidelines for SEO document. More and more websites have started using CSS sprites to reduce the number of HTTP requests made to the web server, thus improving page load times. While this is great, the implementation makes it impossible to add alt attributes, raising accessibility and SEO concerns. You can load icons, spacers, and other small images using CSS sprites, but product images should be loaded as single images with proper alt text. The content of the title attributes for images is not cached by search engines. However, this doesn't mean that search engines don't use the title attribute to extract relevant signals or that you shouldn't implement it. The title attribute displays as a tooltip on mouse over in many browsers and is used to give users additional information. If an image is representative, it requires an alternative text, but it can have a title attribute too. The content of the title attribute shouldn't be an exact copy of the alt text, but rather should complement it. Keep the attribute short enough and don't just list keywords. Create a meaningful sentence. Our initial sample tag can now be improved to read like this. Don't underestimate title attributes just because search engines don't cache their content. They can play a big role in providing context to users, and we don't really know how search engines use them to extract relevance. Specify the width and height of the image tag. Let's improve the image tag further for faster browser rendering and better page load speed. A quick tip here. For infinite scrolling or other image-heavy use, defer image loading until images are visible in the browser. Use keyword-rich file names. You probably noticed the unfriendly file name used in the initial example. This file name doesn't help search engines understand what the image is about and should be avoided. This is an example of good image file naming for a category thumbnail, as it includes the category name breakdiscs. The file names for product images should be even more specific. Your file names should include the product name, the category name, or whatever is depicted in the image. Having keywords in file names has long been recognized as an SEO factor. A common challenge for large e-commerce websites that use hosted image solutions to manage, enhance, and publish media content is that most of these solutions don't create SEO-friendly image names. For example, this URL is not SEO-friendly at all. Talk to your provider to find out whether there's a workaround to achieve a better file naming convention. If we further optimize our example to include a relevant file name, we now have the following image tag. You should set and enforce image naming rules, otherwise things can quickly get messy. For example, you could have the rule to append the image ID at the end of the file name after 2+ signs, as in this example. Provide context for your images by using captions and nearby text. Image captions or nearby text surrounding the image can provide context to search engines. Apart from adding relevant image captions, you can provide better context for your images by placing plain text content nearby. Whenever possible, add a relevant sentence close to the image, both visually and in the HTML code. Here's how our image element can be improved even further by adding a caption to it. In many cases, the caption will be the product or the category name. Create standalone landing pages for each image. If it makes sense, for example, if you sell stock images, create dedicated landing pages for each image. This is an example of a clean, useful landing page dedicated to a single image. You can encourage users to generate content on your website by allowing them to comment, share, or rate images. Make use of image XML sitemaps. Create image XML sitemaps and include information about your product and category images. You will be able to specify information such as image caption, geolocation, title attribute, and license. Once you have generated this file, submit it to Google using the Search Console. Add EXIF data to your images. At least one search engine, Google, has confirmed that it uses EXIF data when analyzing images. More and more photo and mobile devices automatically add information such as geolocation, the owner of the picture, or the camera orientation to the EXIF data. If EXIF has the potential to give search engines additional info about a picture, and apparently it has, consider editing the EXIF data for your product and category images. Don't make this a top priority though. Adding image metadata such as user comments can be a good way to reinforce your image's title or the alt text. Other metadata that may be useful are artist, copyright, or image description. It may be worth testing how adding EXIF metadata affects traffic from image search. Just keep in mind that Google recrawls images at a much lower rate than regular web. Also, it pays to mention that when you use image optimization tools to reduce image size, you can accidentally remove existing EXIF data. Group similar images into folders. If possible and appropriate, all images that can be logically grouped under a similar theme should be grouped into folders. You can see how this t-shirt image is located under the t-shirt directory that contains only t-shirt images. The advantages of grouping into folders are that you will be able to add keywords to the image URL, and you will be able to provide relevance clues to Google image search users. While grouping has limited to no influence on rankings, keywords in the directory structure are some of the signals search engines are looking for. In our example, if we put the image under the t-shirt directory, the image tag becomes this. Use absolute image source paths. The way you reference the image source doesn't directly influence rankings, but using absolute instead of relative paths can help to avoid problems with crawling, broken links, content scrappers, and 404 errors. If we update the source to reference an absolute path, our example becomes this. Make the images accessible through plain HTML links. Try not to use Flash or JavaScript to create slideshows, swatches, zooming, or other similar features. That will make it impossible for search engines to find image URLs for important images. If you have to use JavaScript, provide alternative image URLs, otherwise search engines will not be able to crawl them easily, and the images might not get displayed in image search. Search engines know that users like high-quality images, so always keep the high-resolution product image URLs accessible when JavaScript is disabled. Search engines can execute JavaScript to some extent, but if the only way to reach a product image is with JavaScript enabled, crawlers may never discover that image. Implement plain text web buttons. One technique for improving page load speed, and in some cases even the internal link relevance, is to create web buttons with CSS and HTML. Instead of using the classic web button made of an image, you mimic the appearance of the button by overlaying plain text on a CSS-styled background. Here's how a sample implementation looks like. In this screenshot, the text on the blue background buttons, such as Buy Celebrex, is plain HTML text that can be selected with the mouse. Since search engines seem to assign a bit more weight to text links than to image alt text, this technique has the potential to increase the relevance of the linked to page. The opposite of this technique is to take unwanted text and embed it in images. If you have a global footer that includes a regulatory warning at the bottom of each page of the website, you could embed it into an image so it's not diluting the page relevance. This is a bit gray hat. Keep in mind that this technique is used mostly by spammers to pass email filters, and it can be flagged as spam on web pages too. Use it at your own risk. The text in this image is not plain HTML text. It's actually text embedded in an image. With tactics like this, keep in mind that Google is fully capable of reading text from images. Make it easy to share images. Whenever appropriate, make it easy for users to share and embed your images. This is great because with a mandatory image attribution requirement, you can also generate backlinks. In this example, take a look at how Flickr integrates social sharing and embed codes. If they can do this, why can't you? So we started with a very basic image element, and we've ended up with this optimized version.